I thought she was the one I could trust, until I found out she used me like a lifeline. What happened next? I didn't just lose her. I made sure she and her rich boss paid the price. I remember the first time I met her. There was something about the way she smiled that made me want to believe in something real. It wasn't just a passing feeling. I felt like I had found someone who could finally see me, someone who mattered. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about anything complicated. I just wanted to be close to her, to share my life, my dreams, my small moments of happiness. We started spending more time together, and I felt that rare kind of comfort that makes you let your guard down. I told her about my past, my hopes, and even the things I was afraid of. It wasn't always easy for me to open up, but with her it felt natural. I believed in us. I believed she believed in me. She was smart, funny, and always seemed to know how to lift my spirits when I was down. I admired her strength, her confidence, and her way of handling life's little challenges. I thought we were building something real, something that could last. I never saw the cracks beneath the surface because I wanted to see the best in her. Looking back, I realized that trust came easy for me because I wanted so badly to be loved. I wanted someone who would stand by me, not someone who would use me. But at the time, I was blinded by hope. Every text, every smile, every late-night conversation convinced me she was different. There were moments when she seemed distracted or tense, but I told myself everyone has their bad days. I didn't want to ask too many questions and risk pushing her away. I thought if I just stayed patient and supportive, everything would fall into place. That's how it started, simple, warm, full of promise. I had no idea that beneath that promising start was a secret she was hiding, a secret that would change everything. But at that moment, none of it mattered. All I saw was the woman I cared about, and all I wanted was to be there for her. As our relationship grew, I started noticing little things that didn't quite add up. Sometimes she would disappear for hours without a word, or her phone would light up, but she quickly hid the screen when I looked over. At first, I told myself it was normal. Everyone needs their space, right? But deep down, a small knot of doubt began to form in my stomach. She never talked much about her work or personal life beyond the surface. Whenever I tried to ask, she would change the subject or laugh it off. I didn't want to be that guy who pries too much, so I kept my questions light, afraid that pressing too hard would push her away. Behind her smile, I sensed a tension she didn't share with me. Some nights she looked exhausted, her eyes clouded with worry. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but every time I opened my mouth, the words got stuck. I was caught between wanting to help and fearing what I might discover. One evening, I overheard her talking on the phone, her voice low and shaky. I couldn't make out all the words, but the phrase debt and deadline stood out. My heart sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I knew something was wrong, something serious. Still, when I brought it up gently, she brushed it off with a joke or a vague excuse. I wanted to believe her, to trust that whatever she was dealing with wasn't mine to worry about. But the distance between us grew, like a thin wall creeping up slowly, invisible but real. The more I tried to hold on to the good parts of us, the more the cracks showed. I felt torn, confused by her secrets and my own growing anxiety. I didn't know what she was hiding, but I could feel the weight of it pressing down on our relationship. At that point, I was stuck between hope and fear, wanting to help but afraid to lose her if I dug too deep. The woman I trusted was slipping away, and I didn't know if I could reach her before it was too late. The night she finally told me about her debt felt like the moment everything changed. We were sitting on the couch, the room quiet except for the soft hum of the city outside. I could see the weight she'd been carrying pressed into every line on her face, the usual sparkle in her eyes dimmed by worry. She didn't want to say it at first. She kept twisting her hands nervously, avoiding my gaze. But I pushed gently, telling her I was here, that she could trust me. Finally, the words came out in a shaky whisper. She owed a lot of money, more than I ever imagined. Debts from the past, from mistakes she'd made trying to keep things together. I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to get angry. Why hadn't she told me sooner? Why hide something so big? But mostly I felt a deep sadness for her. She was scared, trapped in a mess she couldn't get out of alone. Without hesitation, I told her I would help. I didn't hesitate because I cared. I thought if I could just ease that burden, maybe we could build something stronger together. I told her to lean on me, that I was in this with her. She smiled then, a small, grateful smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I wanted to believe it was the start of us fighting through something difficult together. I didn't see that it was just the beginning of how she would use me. I started putting aside my savings, cutting back on things, trying to find ways to support her. I felt proud that I could help, even if it meant personal sacrifices. Every time I gave, I told myself it was temporary. Soon, she'd get back on her feet and we'd be okay. But with every payment I made, I felt a little more invisible, like I was fading into the background of her life. The woman I loved was slipping away, tangled in her own struggles, and I was left holding the pieces. Even then, I believed that love and patience could fix anything. I didn't know that while I was paying off her debts, she was already planning her escape. I poured everything I had into helping her, my savings, my time, my energy. I cut back on nights out with friends, skipped things I wanted for myself, and worked extra hours. All of it felt worth it because I believed in her, in us. I thought I was saving something precious. But with every sacrifice, I started noticing changes in her. She became more distant, less affectionate. The late-night texts stopped, and when she was with me, her smile felt forced, like she was playing a part. I tried to ignore it, telling myself she was just stressed, overwhelmed by her problems. Sometimes I caught her checking her phone nervously or slipping away to answer calls she wouldn't talk about. When I asked, she'd say it was work or family issues. I wanted to trust her, but the cracks in her story were growing too big to ignore. One night, I found a receipt for an expensive dinner I wasn't invited to. When I asked about it, she laughed it off and said it was just a work thing. But the doubt was there, burning like a slow fire inside me. I felt stuck, conflicted between the man who loved her and the man who was starting to see the truth. My heart told me to hold on, but my gut whispered that something wasn't right. I didn't want to believe she could use me. The woman I cared for was struggling, yes, but I thought we were partners. I thought she needed me, but what I didn't realize was that she was using my help to climb out of her mess, and then planning to leave me behind. Every dollar I gave her felt like a step closer to losing her. The sacrifices I made were building her future, not ours. I was blind to the growing distance between us until it was too late. I clung to the hope that love would fix everything, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. The woman I trusted was slipping through my fingers, and I was powerless to stop it. The day I found out about her, and her rich boss was like a punch to the gut. I never saw it coming. I had been blind to all the signs, too wrapped up in my own hopes and sacrifices to notice the truth staring me in the face. It started with a chance encounter. I was out running errands when I spotted her at a fancy restaurant, laughing, leaning close to a man who wore expensive clothes and an arrogant smile. They looked comfortable, like they belonged there together. It wasn't just a casual meeting, it was something more. My heart sank and I felt frozen, unable to believe what I was seeing. I wanted to confront her then and there, but I knew I needed to prepare myself. I needed to understand how far this had gone. Later that night, when she finally told me the truth, it shattered everything. She admitted she had been seeing him behind my back, the rich boss who had helped her pay off her debts in exchange for something I never wanted to imagine. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. It wasn't just that she had lied or cheated, it was that she had used me. Used my trust, my money, and my love to get what she wanted, only to leave me behind when it was convenient. I felt worthless, foolish, angry, and most of all, heartbroken. The woman I thought cared for me had been playing a game all along, and I was just a pawn. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could do was sit there and let the silence grow between us. My world had tilted, and I didn't know how to find my balance again. For days, I barely spoke or ate. I replayed every moment, searching for signs I'd missed. Every lie, every secret, it all weighed on me like a heavy fog I couldn't shake. But beneath the pain, a new feeling started to grow, a cold resolve. I wasn't going to let this break me. I wasn't going to be her victim. Something inside me stirred, a fire fueled by betrayal and humiliation. I didn't know then how I would fight back, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't done yet. After the shock wore off, I found myself staring at the ruins of what I thought was love. For days, I felt lost, like a part of me had been ripped away, leaving an empty space I didn't know how to fill. The betrayal echoed in my mind, and I couldn't stop asking myself how I had been so blind. But slowly, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, raw and sharp, but beneath it grew a quiet determination. I realized I had two choices: let this destroy me or find a way to fight back, not out of revenge, but to reclaim my life. I started by cutting off contact with her. No more late-night calls, no more hoping for apologies or explanations. It was hard, especially when the memories kept pulling me back, but I knew distance was the first step to healing. Next, I focused on myself, something I'd neglected while trying to support her. I went back to my old hobbies, reconnected with friends I'd ignored, and threw myself into work with a new fire. It wasn't about forgetting her. It was about reminding myself who I was without her. Every small victory mattered. A good workout, a laugh with a friend, a project finished on time, they all chipped away at the weight dragging me down. I started feeling alive again, even if the scars were still there. But the more I healed, the more I realized that the damage wasn't just emotional. She hadn't just taken my trust, she'd taken my money too. The savings I'd poured into helping her were gone. And worse, she was enjoying a life I helped pay for, living comfortably with the man who had been her escape plan. That realization stoked a fire in me I hadn't expected. If she thought she could walk away unscathed, she was wrong. I wasn't going to beg for my money back, but I wasn't going to let her win either. I started thinking about how I could turn this betrayal into something that made sense, something that would make them both realize that using me came with a cost. I couldn't just sit back and watch them live off what I'd given. The pain of betrayal was one thing, but letting them get away with it was another. That anger turned into a stubborn resolve. I decided then and there, if they thought I was done, they were dead wrong. I began gathering information quietly. I knew her schedule, her habits, and I had contacts at her workplace. The rich boss wasn't as untouchable as he seemed. Behind his polished exterior, I sensed vulnerabilities, secrets that, if exposed, could shake his comfortable world. I spent late nights researching, connecting dots, and planning every step carefully. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about justice, about making them understand that using someone like me wasn't a free pass. At the same time, I worked on rebuilding my finances. I took on extra projects, tightened my budget, and slowly started regaining what I had lost. Every dollar I made was a small victory, proof that I wasn't broken. But the real fight was about to begin. I knew I couldn't do this alone, so I reached out to old friends I hadn't talked to in years. People with skills and resources who owed me favors. They didn't ask questions, they just understood. Together, we crafted a plan that wasn't reckless but smart. I wasn't interested in destruction. I wanted balance restored. If she thought she could throw me away like trash, I'd make sure she felt the consequences. It was scary stepping into this new role, the fighter, the strategist, but it also felt powerful. For the first time in months, I wasn't a victim. I was taking control. I still remembered the man I loved once, the man who gave everything to someone else. But that man was gone now. This was someone different, someone who wouldn't be used and discarded again. The plan was set, and the pieces were moving. I could almost taste the moment when they'd realize the game had changed. It started small, just enough to make them uneasy. I knew her boss ran more than just a company. He played in the gray areas, off-the-books deals, shady favors, bending rules to build his empire. It was all hidden behind smiles, charity donations, and perfectly tailored suits. But every empire has cracks, and I knew where to press. The first move was anonymous. A tip to a journalist I knew from college, someone hungry for a scoop and not afraid to dig deep. I gave just enough information to spark interest. The rest I let them uncover on their own. Within 2 weeks, rumors started spreading through the business circles. People whispered about possible fraud, questioned how fast his company had risen. Next came the financial pressure. One of my friends was a tech whiz, brilliant with numbers and systems. With his help, we traced questionable transactions. We didn't hack anything, just followed public records and pointed the right eyes in the right direction. A quiet email to a regulatory body was enough to trigger an investigation. I watched it unfold like a slow burn. Meetings were canceled. Investors started pulling out. His image, once spotless, began to tarnish. And with every blow to his reputation, I saw her panic grow. She reached out to me once, just a short message. "Did you have something to do with this?" I didn't respond. She didn't deserve answers. Let her wonder. I heard through mutual friends that things weren't so perfect between them anymore. The stress, the media, the pressure, it was breaking their little fantasy apart. And all the while, I stayed silent, watching the story play out exactly as planned. Still, I wasn't finished. This wasn't about destruction, it was about balance, about making them feel just a fraction of what I felt. But the best part, I hadn't even touched the final piece yet. the one thing that would leave them with nothing. And as I prepared to drop the last domino, I felt something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, focused, ready. By now, the tension had reached its peak. Their perfect little world was crumbling, but I wasn't done yet. There was one thing left to take away, her last safety net, the thing she thought would protect her from everything. I had kept quiet about the debts she owed to me, the money she never planned to repay, the trust she shattered. With everything else falling apart around them, this was the piece that would break their fragile alliance. I contacted the bank where she had taken out loans and presented the evidence of her deceit, the false statements, the unpaid bills, the connections to her rich boss. The bank froze her accounts and creditors started calling. Suddenly, the luxury they enjoyed vanished overnight. She tried to come back to me then, desperate and pleading, but I wasn't interested. The man who had been used, lied to, and thrown away was gone. In his place was someone stronger, someone who had learned how to stand on his own. Her rich boss was next, losing investors, facing legal battles, and watching his empire crumble. Their relationship dissolved under the pressure, each blaming the other. I watched from the sidelines, not out of cruelty, but as a silent witness to justice. It wasn't easy. I wrestled with feelings of guilt, anger, and relief all at once. But in the end, I realized I hadn't just taken from them, I had taken back my dignity. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the man who refused to be broken. And though the scars of betrayal would always be there, they no longer defined me. With everything behind me, I finally felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. The chaos they left in their wake had cleared a path I never thought I'd find, a path to rebuild not just my life, but my sense of self. I spent months piecing myself back together. The pain of betrayal still lingered like a quiet shadow, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, I learned to carry it like a scar, a reminder of what I survived, not what broke me. I focused on the future, setting new goals and dreams that were mine alone. No more sacrifices for people who didn't value me, no more blind trust. I was careful, but I was open, to friends, to love, and to life. Funny thing is, I started to see things clearer. The man I was before, the one who gave everything to someone who used me, that man was important. But the man I became through it all was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. I don't hate her anymore. I've forgiven the past, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger would only keep me tied to that broken chapter. Now I'm free to build a life that's honest, real, and mine. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see a victim, I see a survivor. They used me once, they left me for someone richer, but in the end, I made sure they lost more than I ever did. And that's a victory no one can take away.